Welcome to episode 3 of Casual for Speedrun BeamNG.Drive, where we will learn how the casuals do their best to try and thwart BeamNG's AI, while the speedrunner uses them to their advantage. We start off on Ring Road Race, where the speedrunner starts by going to the left of the Miramar to pass, but doesn't quite have enough horsepower, so will need to get by with driving skills. They take an optimal line and dive into the inside of the Miramar, passing it, with lots of momentum to spare, even almost passing the Barstow ahead. Unfortunately, the Barstow has too much horsepower to get past. Meanwhile, the casual is way in the back, not having enough skill to overcome the slow car they're driving. Back in the tunnel, the speedrunner was able to pass and slot in front of the Barstow. Unfortunately for the casual, but very fortunately for the speedrunner, the Barstow makes about 4 times the horsepower of the Piccolina they're driving. So they let the Barstow give them a push, that gave them a burst of speed, quickly stopped by the back of the Piccolina, but after a couple corners the speedrunner gets another push from the Barstow again, bombs the apex, and then passes the Piccolina, leaving all the other cars in their dust for good. You may be wondering why the speedrunner has to use such an aggressive driving style in this mission. For starters, the Piccolina 110B that they're driving was just 785 kilograms, making it slightly lighter than Max Verstappen's current 2024 F1 car. Unfortunately, it only makes it 34 horsepower, about 3.5% of Max's F1 car, so we need all the help that we can get. And we can get that help by letting the other cars accelerate for us by just driving in front of them and letting them do all the work. Another weird thing about this car is that while it revs to about 5400 RPM, all of its performance is from 2000 to 4000 RPM. So when you use all 5400 RPM, the horsepower drops from 34 horsepower down to 11, which is about what the 2024 Sauber F1 car makes, at least judging by its lap time. Now that the casual has completed their first lap 2, we're just gonna skip to the end of this mission, as lap 2 is really just the same without the boost from the other cars, except for the casual having this one wild crash. After the casual was able to limp home, they took 4 minutes and 34 seconds, while the speedrunner took just 3:42, saving 51 seconds and beating all 3 AI drivers, each of which had at least double the horsepower that the pitiful Piccolina 110 had in this scenario. Mission 17 is Wild West Trails, where we have a rally race against 2 BTK I-Series. Each have about 65 more horsepower than the Legrand we're driving. And that doesn't help them at all, as through the first corner the speedrunner dives past the first and then passes the second one in about 10 seconds, leaving the much more powerful cars way behind. Entering the dirt section, both players go to the left of the rock on the right, although the speedrunner can go to the right of it if they do need to pass one of the ETKs. At the crest of the next hill, there is a drift jump where the speedrunner needs to avoid the bush on the left, but not go so far to the right as to hit the metal sheet. Then they take third gear into the bridge, which is actually much harder than it looks. The speedrunner makes a handbrake turn, which it looks like they did start too late, so they went a little wide in this run, which did lose them a little bit of time, but hey, they made it and are on the ridge road now. This is a very long, high-speed section that's very difficult, although the speedrunner will use some very cool rally tricks, such as the Scandinavian flip, where they turn one way and then into the drift, so they can start a drift without actually needing to use the brakes. This is a very dangerous section, as I said, as if you go off, you are going into the gully, and there is no repairing your car after that. Looking at the casual, it looks like they've crashed several times and are crashing another time, so that is a lot of time lost, but hey, at least they're still moving. Meanwhile, the speedrunner is getting back onto asphalt and taking the narrow bridge turn, which is actually really difficult, as you'll see with the casual, will go too fast into it and ended up having to reverse that. Then there's a nice high-speed shootout through the asphalt all the way to the end, with a really nice corner cut at the last checkpoint. Luckily for the casual, it looks like the red ETK has broken down, so they're going to manage to get not last for the first time. Congratulations, casual! Way to go! So, the mission for the casual took 3 minutes and 5 seconds, while the speedrunner did it in 2 minutes flat, due to not crashing, hitting sick jumps, sick drifts, and taking better lines, saving 1 minute and 4 seconds. But I do think we should give the casual a gold star for this mission for not coming in last, even though it was completely luck-based. Mission 18, Industrial Loop Race, is one of 2 special missions in this run where you're allowed to pick your own vehicle for it. So the casual and speedrunner have both picked cars with pretty similar power output, but they go about it in very different ways. As you can see, the speedrunner got past all the other cars in under 2 seconds, and it is going into the first corner now. So for the vehicle the casual picked, they chose the T-Series Jado Rampo, which makes just over 1,000 horsepower before the rockets kicked in. Unfortunately, it weighs about 8 tons, but it does have that ram plow for easier passing potential. Meanwhile, the speedrunner decided to go for the speedrunning standard, the 2021 horsepower Chevette Scintilla that is limited to a very reasonable 416 kilometers or 258 miles per hour by the gearing, and it can take about 3 Gs of cornering force. Unfortunately, it is a fairly heavy vehicle at 1,257 kilograms, or about 400 kilograms more than a modern F1 car, which makes it lose a whole lot of speed in corners, but hey, this is the best you can do with stock vehicles. This specific tune was developed by Haiku, and then I made some minor modifications to help it from losing the back end, although it does not seem to have done that well in that regard, as again, this is the fastest car in the game. With that 2,000 horsepower, the speedrunner is going to be able to get up to about 330 kilometers or 205 miles per hour in the back straight, which is going to be the top speed we're going to see in this run. So yeah, this and the next mission are going to be very difficult with this extremely high horsepower car. It is kind of why we don't do an all time trial speedrun, as that would be driving this car for several hours straight, and that is just not feasible with how twitchy it gets at high speed. It is incredibly tough to drive. But the speedrunner will be able to hold on to this car for another couple corners as it's getting to the end of the race now. Although again, 2,000 horsepower is more than twice an F1 car, and it's very heavy with, again, 400 kilograms more, making this probably the toughest car to drive in the game. But luckily the speedrunner is able to get across the line in a fiery finish. At the end of this mission, it took the casual 4 minutes and 33 seconds as they fell into a pond and definitely picked the wrong vehicle. And for the speedrunner, they picked the right vehicle, and they would actually have finished the next mission before the casual even completed this one, as it took the speedrunner 2 minutes 20 seconds for this mission, saving 2 minutes and 12 seconds, or about 30 seconds more than our previous time save leader. This is also 48% time save, beating King Size's time save percentage, but we have some tricks up our sleeve to get even better later this episode. Mission 19 is Short Course Race, the other mission where we're allowed to use whatever vehicles we choose. So let's see if the casual's attempt to be clever with the ram plow will pay off, and it appears not to have. This is a fairly simple mission with 2 laps around a racetrack, made not quite as simple by the fact that the speedrunner has double the horsepower of a modern F1 car. The speedrunner takes fairly good lines and cuts the track where available, and the casual is using the rocket boost to try and catch up with the other cars, and the ram to get them out of their way. The speedrunner will use the 2.0 second 0 to 60 to ignore the chicane, and the 7-second quarter mile to blast past the bridge onto the next turning area, where they will completely ignore track limits and go onto the sand, go onto the curb, go onto the grass, and then go around the final corner and rocket to the end. This mission is pretty much the exact same on lap 2, so we're gonna skip that also, and let's just skip to the end, where the casual did it in 3 minutes 19 seconds. The speedrunner took just 1 minute 48 seconds, saving 1 minute 30 seconds, and overall just making the casual look like they've made a very poor choice in vehicle. Next up is Dam Hopper, where we need to jump as far as possible, so the speedrunner will of course jump as short as possible. They will rocket down the straight and then go to the ramp. Once they hit the ramp, the speedrunner will roll off to the left, run into the building, and turn the engine off so the car doesn't roll anywhere. And that's about it. This mission takes the casual 30 seconds to complete, and the speedrunner does it in just 20 seconds, saving about 10 seconds. And there's nothing really else to say about this mission, so let's move on. Scenario 21 is a mission where we need to shoot pigeons and widgeons with cannons. As you can tell, it's pretty silly. The speedrunner starts off by just spamming the first 3 shots, and then with the 4th they're going to shoot at a group of cars, and they manage to get a quad collat. The speedrunner doesn't actually even need to hit any vehicles with the shot, but it's just faster to shoot in their general direction, so it works out that way. And this time it appears I got lucky with an insane quad collat. This mission took the casual 1 minute and 22 seconds, while the speedrunner did it in just 16.1, saving 1 minute and 6 seconds, or 81% time save. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that record is gonna stick. Highway Loop 1 is another scenario where we get to use the Scintilla. Unfortunately, it's just a normal one and not our speedrun variant. The mission starts out with the casual running into the 3rd place car, who will always go into the HOV lane. Meanwhile, the speedrunner went around it and is heading into the tunnel. Here, it depends on how good of a start the speedrunner gets. In this case, they were able to outbrake the 2nd place car, so they're able to just stay ahead of it. If they weren't fast enough, they will cut back behind the 2nd place car and pass them on the inside. But they're making it out of the tunnel after using some optimal lines and heading towards the chicane. Meanwhile, the casual was able to get ahead of the 3rd place car as it actually decided to just turn around for no reason, and it actually does that every single time. The speedrunner is going into the opposite lane of traffic at the gas station, and then at the next checkpoint they're going to hop the curb and get into the correct lane of travel. This can do some damage to the floor, but I find it's pretty safe to do and is usually a big time save. The 2nd tunnel is pretty difficult to get through as it takes some precise high-speed cornering and then a nice short straight into another heavy braking zone and more high-speed cornering. The speedrunner will have a little bit of trouble in this 2nd section of the tunnel, but they will be able to hold it and then get back on the throttle for another high-speed straight. If you're enjoying this video, have you tried pressing the like and subscribe button? I think they're pretty neat. Anyways, we're heading into another high-speed braking section where we will need to slow down for this corner, and the speedrunner does take it a little bit on the dirt, for cool factor I guess. Then going into the final section, there's the highway off-ramp, which you can do at about 240 kilometers per hour. Going onto the final stretch, the speedrunner is going to put the hammer down and reach about 320 kilometers per hour by the end of the lap. So they will be getting a little close to 200 miles per hour again, but not quite there. Now that we've finished our lap, it's pretty much the same as lap 2, so we're just going to skip to the end and take a look at the times. The casual took 5 minutes and 7 seconds on this, and the speedrunner took 4 minutes 13 seconds, saving time from just knowing how fast you can take the corners and driving skills. Although, again, there's not really too much to do as it's just optimal lines for this mission. The final mission of today's episode is Quarry Triple Threat, where we get to drive the wonderful K-Series around a quarry, needing to use rally skills and a car usually bought by people who didn't even know dirt roads existed. In the first corner, the speedrunner does a Scandinavian flip, turning away from where they want to go and then into the turn, and gets a good drift into the hairpin. They then blast around the next corner and drift onto the asphalt, where they're going to be taking as tight of lines as they can. They're going to be going into the dirt even for a lot of these corners. As for the casual, they're doing their best, I guess. But the speedrunner has a trick up their sleeve by using this shortcut here. This is actually the same shortcut used in BeamNG Mountain, but it was actually discovered for this mission as this mission was released first. The speedrunner then goes onto the opposite side of the road and then gets a tough braking zone over by the gas station. If you mess up this braking zone, you will go into the dirt behind it, but it's only a little bit of time loss, although it will look very embarrassing if you do that in a real run. Not that I know anything about that. They then hit a sick drift over a corner, hit a slight drop, and then are on to lap 2, where they again do the same thing as lap 1. So as the other scenarios, we're going to just skip lap 2 as there's nothing really interesting going on here, and let's go straight to the times. For the casual, this mission took 3 minutes and 1 second, while the speedrunner did it in 2 minutes and 24 seconds, saving 36 seconds due to that shortcut through the trees and having very cool rally skills. Wow, that was a pretty long episode. Let's take a look at the times and see how everyone did. The casual played for about 25.5 minutes, while the speedrunner played for just over 17, saving 8.5 minutes. They saved 33% of the time the casual drove this episode, making this way better than the average of 28% in each of the last 2 episodes. The total stats are up to 53 minutes for the casual and just under 37 for the speedrunner, saving 16.5 minutes or an average of 30.7%. In terms of speedrunning news that has happened since the last episode, there have been a few really cool glitches that have been found and immediately banned. Those are the ones that let people teleport and change cars while loading into scenarios. And it's pretty cool how they were found. You can see a Molten Metal Mayhem's video from last week. It's pretty interesting. It looks like you've made it to the end of the video. Congratulations! Make sure to like and subscribe on your way out. And if you're watching this on the playlist, consider this a snack checkpoint. Go get yourself a snack, refill your beverage, and make sure you're stretching too. I'll see you in the next episode where we have a rock crawling segment of 9 missions. So it'll be a long one, or I'll cut it into 2 and make it 2 short ones. We'll see.